The views and content expressed on the Pop Culture Courtroom are provided solely for educational and entertainment purposes and do not constitute legal advice. For any legal matters, please consult with a licensed attorney.
Welcome back to the Pop Culture Courtroom. I'm Matt Hardin.
And I'm William Mayfield. And today we are discussing Happy Gilmore 2, Part 2.
We went over the plot background in the first part of our podcast, so if you'd like to hear us on that, feel free to listen to the other one. For those of you just listening to the second one, the second movie returns to Happy Gilmore's life 29 years from the first movie. There will be spoilers, so if you've not watched this movie yet, 40-something million people have, so you need to get on that same. In this movie, Happy Gilmore, we get back with him almost 30 years later. He's no longer working as a golfer due to the death of his wife, Virginia Bennett, from an errant drive that he had about 10 years earlier than that. In this podcast, we're going to talk about the second half of that movie in an incident with the maxi contest that takes place at the last part of the movie, specifically an incident involving Eminem. So Eminem comes out as the son of the heckler, the jackass guy. We see the callback to him a little bit earlier during the awesome fight between Shooter and Happy.
The great sizzler in the sky.
Which is a A+ line. Yeah. That dad also, I think he was the dad in the Freaks and Geeks show that started the career of a lot of very high-level Hollywood stars, including Seth Rogen, James Franco, people like that. Anyways, he passed away a couple of years ago. They have a great homage scene to him from the graveyard, along with, Grandma, the Mr. lady, the Bob Barker. I mean, the fight is one of my favorite parts of the movie. It's really, really well done. And so Eminem comes in here. He's the son. He's there to heckle Happy during the maxi contest. Happy's sons get involved immediately. And looking this up, there's a lot of this. All the golf scenes were filmed in New Jersey. So the sons throw in the young heckler, played by Eminem, into the pond, and what happens?
He gets absolutely massacred by multiple alligators. And so you're probably thinking, well, this is just kind of a throwaway scene. They're really, it's almost like a cartoon when Wile E. Coyote falls off of a cliff. But that's not how it starts. It starts, I know where Marshall Mathers' character, Eminem, says, I know you're not going to hit me. You can't hit me or you'll go back to jail. And he goes, oh, I can't, but they can. And that's how the sons come in. So the whole scene is based upon a lawsuit and the legality of whether or not he can hit him. Now, it's not okay for Happy to assault him, whether or not he's got a judgment against him or not. But they are considering this. And yet, there's no conceivable way where Eminem's character survives this attack.
Well, yet again, as we talked about in our first Happy Gilmore podcast, the tour is doing, of either side is doing nothing to prevent them being messed with by the general public. So, I mean, as far as if, in the first one, the heckler ran over Happy with a car, hit him with his car, I think they would have liability here. So what's really peculiar about this to me is this New Jersey, it's too cold there in the winter to even have alligators. I think this is a throwback to about 2-3 years ago. They had somebody that threw an alligator in a pond in New Jersey as a pet, and they found this 4-foot alligator swimming around in a pond and then took it out pretty quickly. But the winters are so harsh there, they wouldn't be able to survive. That's why we don't have alligators where we live in middle Tennessee. So I don't know. This is kind of the most out of character scene in the whole movie to me. I mean, it's just, they're laughing at this guy getting torn apart
as Eminem goes to join his dad at the Great Sizzler in the Sky. I think the foreseeability of it, I don't think the golf course is going to be on the hook for this at all, to be honest. The foreseeability is extremely low. Even in golf tournaments in Florida, they don't have big walls or fences or signs saying not to throw people in the lake, because that's just not something that people do at golf tournaments.
Well, I'll say one thing about that. So as somebody who plays a healthy amount of golf in Florida, every course manages the alligators to some levels. An alligator that's like we were talking about that 4-foot alligator a minute ago, 4 or 5-foot alligator is probably not going to be a real issue for an adult to deal with. I mean, you still need to be careful about, children being around there. But in Florida, as everybody knows, if there's fresh water, you should assume there's alligators in there. What the courses in Florida do is once the alligators reach a certain level, like the place I play most of the time, if it gets above 7 feet, they move them. And they do that for this very reason. Those are a bunch of enormous alligators who are, coming in to chew him up and eat him. He makes no efforts to get out of the pond whatsoever. So I think the course, if they've allowed there to be, number one, alligators in the north where they don't exist, and they somehow have these 4 or 5 gigantic ones that are there, they have some duty to warn the public about that, and they also have a duty to remove them if they're large enough to be accessing the golfers or the crowd that comes there. I mean, there's thousands of people purportedly, attending this event. They've got to protect the general public against that type of harm, so I'm gonna take the opposite stand, and I think there is a potential case. Now, if you're in a jury, Eminem's character is behaving very badly during this, antagonizing on purpose, trying to make Happy Gilmore lose, again, the beloved Happy Gilmore. I think there's probably some case there for that against the golf course, against Happy's children. What do you think about that?
Oh, there's certainly a case. They intentionally pick up a person and throw them into a lake. Now, here's the issue. We're in New Jersey. What do they think they're doing? Because intent is really relevant in what crime you get charged with. First-degree murder is premeditated murder. I don't think this is premeditated. It's kind of spur of the moment, heat of passion. This guy's messing with their dad. The most time you hear about second-degree murder, heat of passion, is usually over like a marital conflict. But this is a premeditated murder. The kids haven't been thinking, how can we, end this guy's life? They're in New Jersey. I think it's pretty reasonable to assume that they're just throwing him in a lake, which again is not okay. It's certainly some sort of crime, whether it be a assault or something like that. But I don't think that the requisite mens rea, which is a fancy word for intent, is there for this to be considered murder.
So I think you're looking at it as strictly a criminal matter.
Sorry.
From a civil side, I would introduce another legal term that we use, which is called a subsequent intervening cause. So when his 4 boys go in and throw him in the water, what they're trying to do is dilute the situation, let their dad continue playing golf. And would they have had anticipation that in New Jersey there would be these gigantic alligators and they're eating it? I don't think so. I think the alligators are a subsequent intervening cause, meaning not something that was foreseeable to them. And so I think you're going to have, from a civil standpoint, a difficult time with that. Now, could they be charged with an assault or something like that? Probably, but I don't think it's anywhere near the level of them being responsible for Eminem's death.
I agree. I think the damages could certainly be limited on the civil side, based on the foreseeability. So I think that we're saying that there is a case, but it's maybe not as significant as you would originally think.
I'd take the civil case, and I think it's a better case against the golf course, way better than it is against Happy's sons. I'd probably leave them out, and then force you can actually, if you're defending a case, if you're defending that golf course, you're allowed to bring in other parties, point the finger at them and say they're at fault. I'd make them prove that case. And then again, you can have Happy come be a witness. I think it's going to be hard to get at those boys. Definitely don't have any money. I mean, they all have relatively menial jobs that aren't going to pay tremendously well. So they're somewhat judgment proof, I think, because of their assets. But
They're not living under Happy's roof either.
but Happy didn't do anything. I mean, could you argue that he said one of my sons did that he maybe, so maybe you could try to shoehorn him in there. But however, the golf course and a place where alligators don't exist, allowing multiple ferocious, enormous alligators to be living there, where the greens people would have seen them on a daily basis. I mean, they've got to come up and breathe. They don't just lay under the pond all the time. So I think the golf course has liability, and if Marshall Mathers has, in this fictional world, a little heckler that's, growing up, I think there's probably a lawsuit to be pursued.
And how convenient for Happy that all of these places that he has to go throughout the entire movie seem to be a comfortable driving distance from his house. The Tour Championship, the Maxi Championship, everywhere. It's all right where maybe that's why Happy moved there.
I think Happy already lived in Connecticut. That's where Grandma's house is.
That's creative liberties. It's apparently the golf capital of the world is right where Happy lives. So
Right.
that's where it was in the first movie.
So we're going to move on now to our relevant evidence section. Today, we're going to be talking about a third incident in the movie that involves Scotty Scheffler. Set us up.
So Scotty Scheffler, noted felon, he just running afoul of the law left and right. In fact, his son Bennett almost trespassed onto the 18th green of the Open Championship after Scotty's win.
And
He just can't control the Schefflers. And
one of the most charming and nicest families ever to be involved in sports.
it is a fact. They did this indoor golf league where guys were making lots of money, and he didn't participate in that because it would take too much time from his family in Texas. He still plays golf with all of his buddies back home in Texas, and he's family first. In fact, he did an interview where he talked about how winning golf tournaments basically provided him joy and happiness for 2 to 3 minutes, and while he's extremely grateful to get to do this and accomplish a lifelong dream, there are things more important to him than golf, like his faith and his family. And so the juxtaposition of Scotty being a felon is something that this movie rightfully played on because, as we all know, they're referencing him getting briefly arrested at the PGA Championship at Valhalla prior to his round because of a misunderstanding with a traffic officer.
Well, I think it's a callback to Adam Sandler and how important the family is for him. I think he and his writing partner are writing this on purpose. Adam Sandler's his wife and his two daughters play prominent roles in this movie, and I think that's largely so they can be around each other, and because it's a close knit family where Adam Sandler puts his family first, and then his relationship with his friends. That's the core of nearly every one of his comedy movies is family. I mean, Happy Gilmore 1 is largely about the relationship with his grandmother and him trying to take care of her old age because she took care of him growing up. I mean, it's lovely.
And quite frankly, Happy playing golf for money would have a tendency to maybe be a little bit of a turnoff. But in both these movies, he's not playing golf for money for himself. In the first movie, he's playing golf for money for grandma. In the second movie, he's playing golf to send his daughter to ballet school. So that's a really good way of making this endearing. Now, in setting up this incident, Scotty asks Happy, takes him aside, and he says, "Hey, I've got a hockey question for you." And then he asks him about basically, when you punch someone in hockey, do you pull the sweater, which is a hockey jersey, over their head? And Happy goes on to explain how that restricts their movement, and then shows them the punch. This, I believe, is a callback to a famous interaction between Scotty and Tiger, where Tiger and Scotty are on the range, and Scotty goes, "So I was watching you hit range balls, Tiger, and you weren't taking divots." And then Tiger went on to say, "Well, when I'm flushing it, I don't take divots." And Scotty was perplexed. And it's just this very interesting situation of a guy who is on top of the world. Scotty is bar none the best golfer in the world right now, as much as it's tough for me to admit that being a huge Rory fan. I do like Scotty, and that is abundantly clear. But to see him ask Tiger that question and almost like, "Hey, can you teach me about golf?" He's kind of doing the same thing with Happy Gilmore here, and it comes off as so endearing, which Scotty comes off as in general in his entire life, really.
I think it's a good message too, that is no matter how good you are, you can always learn from people that have been there before you and have learned along the way. I mean, there was something on Twitter within the last week or so that had showed Tiger's schedule, like his daily schedule during his prime. And the amount of work the man did and people like Scotty Scheffler do to be the best they possibly could be at their craft is unbelievable and takes a massive amount of sacrifice in order to get there. No matter how good naturally you're at golf, the ones that are best are the ones that are able to work to a level to be the best they possibly can be.
And what's so unique about Scotty is generally, it takes like you said, it takes an enormous amount of hard work to get to this level. And sometimes with that hard work, people start to get entitled, like they deserve everything that's come to them. And to an extent, that's correct. But what's great about Scotty and what's so unique about him is that he is a superstar, and it is so uncommon for a superstar to be such a down to earth, normal, humble person where their whole life doesn't revolve around what made them a superstar. I mean, I pulled for Michael Jordan, I pulled for Tiger, I pulled for Wayne Gretzky just because I love watching greatness, but there was no Tom Brady is the same way. In fact, Tom Brady responded to Scotty Scheffler's interview basically saying, "Well, I cared about all those things too, but I think you can do both." All four of the people I just mentioned were hyper focused on their sport, and it really, at times, took over their life. Scotty seems to have accomplished all this without letting the sport do that, which is incredible to me.
Well, what's interesting about some of those other guys, Michael Jordan, married again later, had, I think additional children with the most recent spouse. And the biography I read on him was basically, after he retired from basketball, he was somewhat floundering. And what the author found after talking to him was that it's this family that has centered him. So at the core of all these Adam Sandler families, as we've talked about before, is this sense of family. We get into this incident with Scotty Scheffler. As you said, he's taught him how to fight. He immediately gets heckled, early on, and even before he's hit a ball in the maxi contest at the end, the miss it. We talked the callback to Caddyshack on Caddy Day, the tournament that Danny Noonan wins with that putt. Then I think there's one other callback later on, which is at the change of the bet at the end. At the end of Caddyshack, there's that crazy bet where they do double or nothing when the best Danny Noonan can do is tie. It's really odd choice. Well, same things happen here. If Happy makes that putt over that green that's floating back and forth, they're just going to tie and go to sudden death. Well, they end up doubling the bet. He has them paying for Vienna's ballet school. He gets the electric car. And he has to buy grandma's house back. So, getting back the things that matter most to Happy, plus he gets his car, a really nice car back when he had his repoed. So, Scotty Scheffler ends up using the Happy method, pulls the sweater over and punches in the face, gets arrested. What do they do with him?
And he goes, "Not again," which is, again, if anybody missed the reference, that was clear that that's what they were doing. And they take him off to jail, and there he is watching golf in jail. And it kind of brings me back to when he talked about, usually golfers get there really, really early for their tee times. They go through this long warm up process. Scotty was on the way to the golf course when all this happened at Valhalla. And so he said it was very different for him doing his stretches and warm up exercises in an orange jumpsuit in jail. Well, they show him in jail this time, and he has this level of comfort to him that, yeah, he's like, this is nothing new for me. And so he's just sitting there watching the Maxi golf tournament.
To be fair, he's a father of a young child, and even under the best of circumstances, the sleep you're getting when kiddos are that little is not awesome. I mean, I'm not sure you ever sleep quite as well again after you have children because you worry about them, and they tend to wake up at night and things like that, especially young babies like that. They still want to be often fed at night. And so, it's almost like Scotty's getting a little break by being in prison. There's an after movie scene where he's saying, or you can get out now. Well, what's for dinner tonight? They're having chicken fingers. So he ends up staying another night, and it's probably largely trying to get a little rest.
Well, if liking chicken fingers is, something important for the number one golfer in the world, then I'm well on my way. They nailed it with Scotty, and it's tough when you have cameos because, these golfers aren't actors. So he did a really, really good job.
Let's come back to the incident just for a minute. The guy is knocked out. I mean, at minimum, he's got a concussion, may have a brain bleed. The next 15 minutes of the movie, he's on Manatee's golf cart, and he's passed out. I mean, it's not like in movies where you get knocked out and it's no big deal, and the heroes or the superhero runs again or something. Or gets right back in the action. And in real life, if you're knocked out for that long, you are seriously injured. So, ultimately, is there a case against Scotty for this? Well, the guy's heckling him, so he kind of, is trying to get him to be quiet and leave him alone. Is that probably more than he should have done? What do you think?
I mean, it's bad golf etiquette, but it's not a threat. It's not something that should have put Scotty in any imminent fear or anything like that. And it's certainly not something that required that amount of retaliation. Could it potentially reduce the judgment a little bit because there was some, assumption of the risk on that guy's part? I guess, but there's really no reason for that guy to think that him saying miss it would merit him getting his shirt pulled over his face and then punched in the face.
So it'll be interesting because, I mean, a lot of times when they pursue criminal charges on something like this, it can be related to what the victim wants to do. And if Manatee doesn't want the guy to do it, it's probably not going to happen. Plus, Scotty doesn't have any real charges. The stuff that happened in Louisville got dismissed. So with somebody that has a clean record, a sense of whether you've been convicted of a crime, being accused of crime, not the same thing. It's whether you're convicted of it. He's likely at worst probably going to get, unless the guy like is super seriously injured, probably going to get some kind of probation. As far as a civil lawsuit, the guy probably would have if he had medical needs, if he had future problems with it. There probably is a suit there. So I'll give this one, because of how much I like Scotty Scheffler, a reluctant yes.
Yeah, I will say this goes back to something you talk about a whole lot. Juries, Maxie Goff is not painted in a very positive light in this film. This guy is doing something that the majority of the population knows is not something you should be doing on a golf course, which is actively cheering against your opponent during his swing. And Scotty is a very likable guy with a really good reputation. So I think those are all going to be factors that maybe limit the recovery for this Maxi golf player. But I do think there will be some sort of recovery.
Well, I'd say finally that you and I are Southern men. I mean, there was a time that if you could expect a punch in the face if you showed bad behavior, talked badly about somebody, and maybe our society was a little better when that was a repercussion of mouthing off. I mean, there's sometimes a repercussions to rude behavior, and I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, I mean, when I see like Cardinals fans, like I want to do that, but I know you can't do that. It just doesn't work. So I just cheer for the Cubs and I move on.
I understand that as a Cubs fan, it's probably really hard for you to take that they've won more World Series titles than you.
I started watching baseball in 2015, so I don't really know.
William is a massive Cubs fan, which he's been his whole life, and it's been fun poking him a little bit as though he's a brand new fan, which he's definitely not. Anyways, thank you all for joining us on this episode of the Pop Culture Courtroom. I'm Matt Hardin.
I'm William Mayfield.
And we'll see you next time.
The Pop Culture Courtroom is a Matt Hardin Law production.
If you're a loved one that's been injured in a car wreck or other personal injury incident, call the law firm, the Tennesseans Trust.
Visit matthardinlaw.com or call 615-200-1111 for your free consultation today.